I've been invited to do my mud paintings, and my mud paintings are a combination of a 19th century scientist named Winogradsky and Mark Rothko color field paintings. But instead of using paint, I use mud, and inside that mud lives mud. Soil is all alive, and there are hundreds upon thousands of organisms that make it transform and do all the wonderful things that soil does for us. But notably, there are microbes that photosynthesize pigments. And so what ends up happening is, over time, my mud turns into a literal painting of a literal landscape of a micro-ecosystem. The microbes photosynthesize these pigments. There are all colors. There are reds and oranges and pinks and greens, browns. The only color I haven't seen so far is blue. But they start out as single pointillist points. They're just colonies. And then those colonies spread as they access the resources in their ecological niche inside of the painting. And then, lo and behold, they eat up all their resources and they pollute out all their waste products, and it's no longer habitable to them. And another microbe that's been lying in wait for these ideal new conditions come on, and it changes the color. And that's how it's a transforming color field painting. But what you need to know, or what I think you need to know, is that Winogradsky, who was the scientist who invented this procedure that I'm appropriating for art, he did it in the late 1800s, and this was before we knew what microbes were. And this was just after the invention of the microscope, right? Like, critical elements are in place for the onset of discovery of the small things. And he thought soil must be alive, so he put some soil in a glass column, and he put it in the window in front of his desk where he worked every day. And I don't know how long it took, but say a red splooch shows up in the glass column, and he's like, that wasn't there before, it was just dark mud. He puts his pipette down into the splooch, he sucks it up, he looks under the microscope, and he sees soil particles, and then he sees little squiggly things. And so he and his wife end up working together. She makes these books that have color swatches of the color of the bacteria, and they name them and they make drawings of them. And these are among the first books of bacteria. But anyways, you know, this is before we know what microbes were, so it was this whole new discovery, but he did it through perceiving color. And microbes only photosynthesize pigments when they're at the surface, when they're exposed to sunlight. So since it's a photosynthetic process, when they're buried in the soil, when you dig up a shovel of soil, you will never see the colors. If they're all there, when you dig them up and you bring them to the surface, that's not their ideal ecological habitat. So they can't propagate in the way that they can in their preferred niche deep in the soil. So all I have done is I have maintained the depth, which allows for the ecological zone, and given sunlight access. So while they're thriving down in this zone, they are also photosynthesizing pigments. And that's how the painting is made. Sean Reed at SANDBOX and I went out and collected mud at 3 sites along the Chester River. This is one of the paintings for SANDBOX. For SANDBOX, I chose to make 3 paintings. One is upstream, so freshwater. One is at Chestertown, sort of a transect from a farm down to the water, and then one is where the Chester River meets the Chesapeake Bay. And so the dominant factor that's going to select for the bacteria, besides the temperature of SANDBOX, is going to be the salinity gradient from the bottom of the river to the top of the river, or vice versa. Yeah, it's just soil, water, and sunlight, which, you know, that's how the world goes around.